I was still holding the coffee I grabbed on my way, and when I saw the red folder on my desk, the one no one ever wanted to see, my name, typed in bold, sat right in the middle. No call, no warning, no meeting, just that. After 17 years, just that. But the second I opened it and read the first sentence, I didn't panic, I smiled. Because I had receipts. And I mean real ones. My boss, Walter Dunley, had no clue I knew what he'd been hiding and who else had been watching. Before we continue, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I honestly love reading each one. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, let's get started. Okay, I'm Callie Brenner. I'm 39, and up until a few weeks ago, I worked at this place called Croft and Amp, Willow Enterprises here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. It's one of those companies you've never heard of unless you're in logistics, and even then, you'd probably pretend you hadn't. Picture beige cubicles, old vending machines that steal your quarters, and that humming fluorescent lighting that gives you a headache by 10 a.m. every day. That was my second home for 17 straight years. I didn't plan to stay there that long. Actually, I didn't plan much after I turned 19. That's when my mom got sick, lung cancer, stage 4, out of nowhere. She went from working full-time at the post office to needing help getting out of bed in, 2 months flat. So I dropped everything. I was supposed to start community college that fall. Never did. Instead, I took care of her. And after she passed, I just floated. I got a job. A decent one. Croft and Amp. Willow had health insurance, which felt like winning the lottery at the time. They hired me as a temp, just to help out with data entry for a few weeks. That turned into months, then years, then somehow, 17. I blinked and realized my entire adult life had happened in the same building, with the same carpet that never got cleaned and the same stale coffee smell that clung to your clothes like smoke. My official title was Senior Logistics Coordinator, but really, I was the human duct tape holding that whole operation together. I was the person they called when the system crashed or when a truckload of medical supplies got sent to Vermont instead of Virginia. I was calm under pressure. I remembered vendor codes like other people remember birthdays. Speaking of which, I remembered everyone's birthday. I had a calendar in my drawer with sticky notes, one for Ashley in HR, one for Terrence in finance. But no one ever remembered mine. Whatever. It was fine. I didn't do it for the attention. I did it because I liked being needed, being useful. That was my thing. I didn't dress loud. I had my cardigan rotation, navy, olive, maroon, gray. I brought my lunch in those old plastic containers with the lids that always smelled like tomato sauce, no matter how many times you washed them. I sat in the same chair at the same desk with the same little space heater by my feet because our section of the building was always freezing, no matter the season. And then there was Walter Dunley, Vice President of Operations. Tall, always wore dark suits, shiny shoes, and this cologne that made your nose sting. I think it was called dominance or something equally awful. He never smiled with his eyes. Always slick, always calculating. The kind of guy who said, "Let's touch base offline," way too often. He wasn't mean, exactly. Just cold, detached, efficient to the point of being robotic. He'd walk past you in the hallway without saying a word. You'd email him about a shipment problem and get a one-word reply 3 days later. But to be honest, I didn't mind. He left me alone, and for years, that was enough. Until it wasn't. About 6 months before the red folder showed up, things started to feel off. It was little stuff at first. Walter asked me to print out a few spreadsheets, but not the usual kind. These weren't from our system. They had no letterhead, no company logo, nothing official. Just numbers and port locations and vendor codes I didn't recognize. "Hey, Callie," he said one morning, real casual, like he wasn't handing me something weird. "Can you just print this off? Hard copy only. And, don't email it anywhere. Just bring it straight to my office." That was the first red flag. Then it became a pattern. He started requesting reports that didn't match anything I'd seen in our system before. Sometimes he scribbled notes on napkins. Sometimes he whispered. One time he handed me a flash drive and said, "Don't plug this into your work computer. Use your personal laptop." I asked, "Is this part of the new vendor restructuring?" He blinked, paused, smiled like he just remembered my name. Something like that. Something like that, my ass. So I started documenting. I didn't say anything out loud. I just logged it, quietly, like a squirrel stuffing away nuts before a storm. Every weird request, every time he asked me to bypass IT, every shipment that didn't line up on the logs, I took screenshots. I emailed them to myself. I even wrote notes in a notebook I kept hidden in the bottom drawer of my file cabinet under an old box of birthday candles. And I started to feel that low buzz in my stomach. You know when your gut tells you something's wrong, even before your brain can catch up? That's what this was. A slow building, can't put my finger on it, wrong. Then came the folder. It was a Tuesday. Cold, gray outside. I was juggling 2 rerouted shipments and trying to reset my login for the 3rd time that week. I had this big travel mug of gas station coffee I picked up on the way in. It was still warm when I saw the red folder. Dead center on my desk. Bright red. Thick. My name, Callie Brenner, printed on a white label right in the middle like a gravestone. I just froze. I didn't even open it at first. I just stared at it. Like maybe if I waited long enough, it would vanish. I remember thinking, this is what it looks like when the lights go out. Then I opened it. Termination letter. 1 page. Due to departmental restructuring, your position has been eliminated, effective immediately. No thank you. No handshake. No meeting. No warning. Just that. I'd worked there 17 years. I'd eaten hundreds of sad desk lunches. I stayed late, came in early, trained people who made twice what I did and left after 6 months. I held that company together during the supply chain nightmare of 2020 when everything was falling apart. And now I was disposable. Ashley from HR came in a few minutes later. She looked like she'd been forced to watch a puppy funeral. "Hey, Callie. I wanted to be the one to tell you, but it wasn't my call." I just looked at her. Whose call was it? She glanced toward the glass office at the end of the hall. Walter's. Walter wanted to keep this clean, she said, which made me laugh. Actually laugh. Like a real, surprised bark of a laugh. Clean? I repeated. Clean like a body dump? Ashley didn't know what to say. She offered me a cardboard box for my stuff. I asked her real calm for a copy of the full termination documentation in writing. She blinked. "You're allowed to request that, but why?" I smiled. Real slow. "Because I'm not going out quiet." She swallowed, said nothing, and right then, I wasn't scared. I wasn't devastated. I was ready. That night was cold, like the kind of cold that seeps through your window frame no matter how much you crank the heat. I sat cross-legged on my couch, this ratty little gray one I got from Facebook Marketplace for $40, with a heating pad wrapped around my shoulders like a cape. I had a glass of wine in one hand, well, let's be honest, a mug, and my personal laptop open on the coffee table, humming like it was nervous too. I opened my Gmail, that same account I've had since 2008, the one with the cringy username I'm not repeating here. And I started pulling receipts. I don't mean gossip. I mean literal, time-stamped, screenshot receipts, PDFs, audio clips, spreadsheets. I'd been quietly sending myself everything for months, backing it all up in a folder titled Taco Recipes because I figured if anyone ever peeked at my screen, they'd think I was just obsessed with food blogs. And I organized it. Every shady ask from Walter. Every random vendor ID. Every route that didn't match where the product was supposedly going. I had one from March. He asked me to backdate a shipment confirmation. Just slid it across my desk on a Post-it and said, "Can you fix the timestamp?" Like I was some kind of accomplice. I didn't fix it. I saved it. I made a fresh folder, this one labeled Compliance Package, Urgent, and I started uploading everything. The silence in my apartment was loud. I could hear my upstairs neighbor's dog trotting across the floor, my fridge humming like it was holding its breath. And then, I wrote the letter. It took me 4 hours to get it right. I didn't want to sound bitter. This wasn't about revenge. I needed it to feel smart, professional, unignorable. I laid it out like a puzzle. This is a formal submission of concerns regarding apparent logistics and documentation discrepancies I witnessed firsthand while working under Walter Dunley, VP of Operations at Croft and AMP, Willow Enterprises. Yeah, I practiced saying it out loud, like I was on some true crime podcast, and this was the voiceover moment when everything shifts. Once it was ready, I sent it. Straight to the Department of Transportation. Because some of the stuff Walter was doing, it wasn't just sketchy. It was potentially criminal. Routing shipments through ports that didn't line up with registered destinations. Avoiding certain inspections. Even changing the classifications on some deliveries, which, if you know anything about logistics, that's a huge red flag. Especially when the product isn't what the paperwork says it is. I hit send. Then I CC'd someone else. Mateo. Now, let me tell you about Mateo real quick. He's this lawyer I'd met about a year earlier when a former coworker, Danny, got fired out of the blue and decided to sue Croft and AMP, Willow, for wrongful termination. Mateo was her attorney. Young, sharp, wore sneakers with his suits. Not in a try-hard way, more like he didn't believe in pretending to be someone he wasn't. I ran into him once in the hallway after Danny won her case. I was carrying a tray of coffees back from the break room, and he held the elevator for me. I remember he looked at me and said, "If you ever need anything, just keep the paper trail." And I did. So that night, I forwarded the whole package to him. Added a short message, "Hope you remember me. I've got something you might want to see." Then I shut my laptop, curled into my couch like it was going to protect me, and waited. The next day? Nothing. The day after that? Still nothing. But on day 3, around 4:15 in the afternoon, right when I was heating up leftover dumplings, I got the call. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Callie Brunner? Yeah. Who's this? It's Mateo. You might want to sit down. I sat down hard on the floor, fork still in hand. DOT opened an investigation this morning. And they're not the only ones. There's overlap with some customs enforcement groups, too. And you, Callie. He paused. You didn't just stir the pot. You lit the whole kitchen on fire. I didn't know whether to laugh or throw up. I went quiet for a second. Is that bad? He laughed, but not in a mean way. Not for you. For Walter? Oh, yeah. He's done. I just stared at the wall. Because part of me thought, okay, he'll get a warning. A slap on the wrist. Maybe a fine. But 2 weeks later, Walter Dunley was escorted out of Croft and AMP, Willow in broad daylight. Let me say that again. Escorted. Security walked him out with 2 men in navy blazers flanking him. No suit jacket. No box of personal items. Just that same smug expression, slightly cracked now like he couldn't believe it was actually happening to him. Ashley from HR told me later someone tipped off a local journalist. Said there were inconsistencies in company documentation. That same journalist wrote a piece titled Red Tape and Red Flags, a logistics giant under fire. Walter's name was in the 3rd paragraph. I didn't tell anyone it was me. Not then. But I watched the fallout. The company issued a memo about cooperating with ongoing investigations. Several of Walter's pet projects got quietly shelved. Half of his inner circle started updating their LinkedIn profiles by the end of the week. And me? I was sitting in my kitchen with a mug of black tea, looking out the window at my neighbor's toddler trying to chase a squirrel, thinking, holy crap. I did that. But here's the weird part. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt empty. Like, for so long, I had existed as this invisible cog in a very loud, very messy machine. I got used to being overlooked, used to staying small. And now that I had actually done something huge, something with real weight, I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't even post about it online. No cryptic tweets. No new beginnings Instagram posts. Just me, tea, and a squirrel. And then my inbox pinged. Mateo again. Subject line, "You okay?" I replied, "Not sure." 5 minutes later, he called. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to," he said, voice warm like he knew exactly where my head was at. "But I think you should know what you did. It's already making waves." I got a call from someone in Washington asking if you'd be willing to give a formal statement. I blinked. Washington? Washington? Yeah. And don't worry, I told them you're not ready yet. But you should be proud. I left. Quiet. Like I didn't want my walls to hear me. You know what's wild? I said, I spent 17 years being scared to speak up. And now that I finally did, I'm scared of being seen. There was a pause. Then Mateo said, "That just means you're human." That stuck with me. A few days after that, I got a letter in the mail. Official looking. White envelope. Heavy paper. It was from Croft and Amp, Willow's legal department. One line jumped out at me. "We are aware of your communications with outside legal counsel and government agencies. Please be advised, I stopped reading." Forwarded it to Mateo. He replied with 2 words, "Let them." That weekend, I bought myself a fancy coffee from the place downtown where the barista makes swans out of foam. Sat on the patio. Wore real pants. Watched the people walk by. And for the first time in almost 2 decades, I didn't feel like I was hiding. 2 weeks after Walter got dragged out in what I now lovingly call the corporate perp walk, things got quiet. Too quiet. It was like I'd been living under a jackhammer for 17 years and someone finally unplugged it. And at first, the silence felt like peace. Like I could breathe. I wasn't checking my email like it might bite me anymore. I could open my blinds without worrying about what disaster was waiting behind them. But then, it started feeling like nothing. I didn't have a plan. No one does after 17 years at the same job. You don't wake up the day after and think, yeah, I'm gonna rebuild my life now. Let's do this. You wake up and stare at the ceiling and realize you don't even know what time you're supposed to eat anymore. So I did what any totally stable, totally fine, recently let go person would do. I wore the same sweatpants for 3 days straight. I rewatched Veronica Mars from season 1 because justice and also I needed Kristen Bell to tell me life could make sense again. I didn't answer texts. I didn't even answer Ashley from HR, who sent a weirdly chipper, "Hope you're doing well," email that made me want to throw my laptop into the nearest river. I was just floating, unanchored, which sounds poetic, but honestly it just felt like I was melting into my couch. Then on a Thursday, gray skies, leftover tie in the fridge, I heard my doorbell. Ding dong. I didn't move at first. I assumed it was someone trying to sell me solar panels or convert me to something, but then it rang again, followed by a knock, and a voice I recognized. "Kelly?" I froze. That was Mateo. I opened the door slowly, and there he was standing on my welcome mat holding a brown paper bag like it was a peace offering. He was wearing jeans and a hoodie with a tiny ketchup stain on the sleeve. Looked like he hadn't shaved in a couple days. There was this soft, hesitant smile on his face, like he wasn't sure I'd slam the door in his face or invite him in. "You didn't return my last email," he said, lifting the bag. "So I brought takeout. Chinese. The good kind." I blinked at him. "You stalked my address." "I Googled it," he said. "There's a difference." I laughed. Like, really laughed. First time in days. And I stepped back and opened the door wide. "Come in. But if the dumplings are soggy, I'm throwing hands." We sat at my kitchen table, the one with one leg that always wobbles slightly if you lean too hard on it. He unpacked cartons, orange chicken, egg rolls, fried rice, even hot and sour soup. He remembered my favorite order. That part hit me harder than it should have. We didn't talk about Walter, or the case, or Croft and Amp, Willow. Not at first. We talked about bad Netflix shows, and how he once tried to make sourdough during lockdown and gave his starter a name, Yeast Witherspoon. We sat there eating straight from the cartons like college kids. Then there was a pause. A long one. Mateo set his chopsticks down. You know, he said, you were more than ready to move on. You just didn't know it yet. I stared at my orange chicken. Yeah, well, ready or not, here I am. He leaned in a little, elbows on the table. So what now? I don't know, I said. Honestly, I don't even know where to start. I don't have a degree. I don't have a resume passed, kept the whole place from falling apart. I can't just walk into somewhere new. He tilted his head. Callie, you're smart. You're loyal. You know how to read a system inside out and fix it before anyone even realizes it's broken. You could run a company. I rolled my eyes. I can barely run my dishwasher. But he wasn't joking. The thing is, he wasn't the first to say it. When Danny, the woman he represented before, won her case, she once told me I should have been running our entire logistics department, not just holding it together with duct tape and Post-its. I thought she was just being nice. But now here was Mateo, not just saying it, believing it. He stayed until after the streetlights came on. When he finally stood to leave, he looked at me for a second like he wanted to say something more, but didn't. Just gave me the soft little nod and said, I'll check in soon. 3 days later, I got an email. Subject line, someone I want you to meet. It was from Mateo, introducing me to someone named Renata Gray. Her bio said she ran a small but mighty supply chain consulting firm that worked with nonprofits and community orgs. Basically, the opposite of Croft and Amp, Willow in every single way. Mateo wrote, she's looking for someone to manage operations. I told her you're the best in the game. I stared at it for a full minute before responding with, are you trying to get me into another war zone? He wrote back, nah, just a better kind of battlefield. Also, they have dogs in the office. That's how I ended up at this local coffee shop downtown, the kind with reclaimed wood walls and too many Edison bulbs, waiting for a woman with a silver streak in her hair and leather boots in August. Renata was a lot. In a good way. She sat down across from me, took one look at my resume, and said, I don't care about paper. Tell me how you solve a bottleneck when 2 suppliers drop out of a route midweek. I told her. Fast, direct, no fluff. Just how I've always thought. Like a chess player, but with forklifts. She grinned. You're hired. Just like that. No 3rd-round interview. No assessment quiz. No asking me what animal I'd be if I were an animal. It's a raccoon, by the way. Obviously. I blinked. Wait. Seriously? Callie, she said, sipping her espresso like it was laced with caffeine and lightning, you've been doing 3 jobs for years and making less than the intern. Come build something with us. And if it sucks, blame me. I said yes. I didn't even hesitate. I walked out of that coffee shop with a job offer in my inbox, a cold brew in my hand, and this weird new feeling bubbling up under my ribs. Hope. The kind I hadn't felt since before my mom got sick. The kind that made me want to take up space. To try. To see what was on the other side of that red folder that tried to end me. When I got home, I sat on my porch with my mutt, Ginger, curled at my feet and messaged Mateo. You were right, I typed. I was ready. I just didn't know it. He replied, I knew you'd find the door. I just wanted to be here when you walked through it. First day at Renata's firm, I wore jeans. That probably doesn't sound radical to most people, but for someone who spent 17 years in slacks that made my thighs scream and cardigans so stiff they could stand up on their own, it felt like rebellion. Like flipping off the entire ghost of Croft and Amp, Willow with denim and sneakers. And it only got better. Renata's office was this big converted warehouse space with exposed brick, tall windows that actually opened, and someone's golden retriever flopped out near the copy machine like he ran the place. There was a giant whiteboard wall covered in messy flowcharts and notes in 4 different colors, and a fridge stocked with La Croix, actual snacks, and oat milk. Oat milk. I stood there that morning just soaking it all in. No fake smiles. No buzzwords like synergy or workflow optimization. No one handing me busy work while pretending it was some vital company mission. Just people. Real, messy, loud, brilliant people doing work that actually mattered. And no Walter. God, no Walter. No looming perfume cloud. No pop-ins that were actually drive-by micromanagement. No being asked to print things without a paper trail. No walking on eggshells because someone woke up with a God complex and a hangover. This was the opposite. My new title? Director of Ops. No assistant. No junior. Just director. Renata made it clear right off the bat, you're not here to play it safe. You're here to shake it up. I want chaos, organized chaos. So I did. First week, I rebuilt their tracking spreadsheet from scratch because their old one had more broken links than a spam email. Second week, I called out a partner that had been late on 3 shipments in a row and negotiated a better delivery schedule and a 10% discount. Third week, I brought Ginger in on Dog Fridays and watched her charm every human in the building like it was her full-time job. Something happened during those weeks. People started looking at me when decisions were being made. Not like, can you take notes on this meeting? But what's your take, Kelly? And then, wild concept, they listened. And when I disagreed, no weird tension. No fake smiles followed by an email later CCing my entire bloodline. Just actual dialogue. It hit me one afternoon in the break room, coffee in hand, laughing with a project lead over a shipping mix-up that somehow ended with 12 crates of fabric going to a retirement community by mistake. True story, this was mine. Not the mess-up, obviously. The moment. The belonging. I wasn't trying to survive anymore. I was building. And Croft and Amp. Willow? Oh, they were unraveling faster than a Christmas sweater caught in a paper shredder. Mateo sent me a screenshot one night, an article from a local business journal with the headline, Croft and Amp, Willow VP resigns amid federal probe. Walter's mugshot was not included, but honestly, should have been. A week later, another headline, DOJ launches formal investigation into logistics fraud. A few names were blacked out in the official report, but Mateo leaned in close, digitally anyway, and said, let's just say someone might be getting a medal. Or at least a very nice thank you card. I didn't smile. I laughed. But it wasn't vengeful. It wasn't bitter. It was clean. Like scrubbing off 17 years of grime and finally seeing your own reflection again. I didn't need them to pay. They already had. They paid with their reputation shattered, with a house of cards crumbling because the one person who held it all together finally stepped away. They paid with their own arrogance. And I got my life back. But okay, real talk? That wasn't the only thing that changed. Mateo and I started meeting more. At first, it was under the umbrella of case follow-ups. Then it was brunch. Then movie nights where we argued over which Ocean's 11 character we were. He says I'm Linus. I say I'm Rusty because I always have snacks. Then there was this one night. We'd just gotten back from some pop-up taco truck that served bria that could resurrect the dead. I was talking about this supplier we'd landed, hands flying everywhere like always, and he just stopped. Looked at me. Quiet, but with this soft intensity like he was memorizing something important. What? I asked mid-ramble. He stepped closer. Just a few inches. Enough that I could smell his cologne, cedar and something warm, familiar. Can I? He started, then stopped. My heart thudded. Can you what? He smiled, barely. I want to kiss you. I just don't want to ruin anything. I didn't say anything. I just closed the distance. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't a rom-com soundtrack moment. It was better. It was quiet and steady and sure. He pulled back after a beat, just barely, forehead touching mine. Was that okay? I said I waited 17 years for that. And it wasn't just about him. It was about this life. This version of me I never thought I'd get to be. The one who didn't shrink. Who didn't apologize for having opinions or emotions or dreams. The one who said yes without needing a spreadsheet to justify it. That night, I lay in bed with Ginger curled behind my knees, staring at the ceiling fan. Same one as the night I sent those files. Same slow, rhythmic spin. But I was different. This was the first time in forever I didn't feel like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because I wasn't living under someone else's terms anymore. I had the receipts. I had the truth. I had me. And for the first time, that felt like enough. I don't remember exactly when it happened, but one morning, I caught my reflection in the microwave door while I was waiting for my coffee to heat up, and I just paused. Not because I looked amazing or whatever. I still had sleep lines on one cheek, and my hair was doing this weird swoop thing it does when I forget to tie it up at night. But I looked strong. Not the kind you lift weights for. The kind you earn. I looked like someone who had been through it and chose not to disappear. And suddenly, I could see her. 17 years ago, Callie. 22. Scared. Lost. Holding her breath every day and just trying not to mess up. I wanted to reach through time and hug her. Tell her, you're not invisible, baby. You're not just a helper or a backup plan. You're a whole person. With a voice. And she did use it. Eventually. I used it. I left that job with my dignity in a manila folder. I exposed a fraud. I built a new life. And somehow I also fell in love. Mateo and I didn't call it that at first. We were careful. Both of us had been through the professional grinder. We'd seen how work and relationships can tangle like cheap necklaces in a junk drawer. But we clicked in ways that didn't feel forced. I remember this one night, late October. We were at this fall festival thing near the outskirts of town, walking through rows of pumpkins and drinking cider that was mostly sugar and cinnamon. I had my hands stuffed into my hoodie pockets and Ginger trotting beside me on her leash, and Mateo kept bumping his shoulder into mine just enough to annoy me on purpose. We weren't talking about anything deep. Just life. Dumb stuff. Like whether candy corn was a scam, it is. But the way he looked at me? Like I wasn't someone to fix or take care of. Like I already was enough. And I swear, in that moment, I thought this is it. This is what peace feels like. It didn't mean everything was perfect. Life doesn't do perfect. Croft and Amp. Willow made headlines for another 2 months. Walter got charged officially. Fraud, obstruction, falsifying records. And they tried to bury it, obviously. PR statements. Internal memos. Legal gymnastics. But people talk. Especially the ones who still work there and started reaching out to me like, Callie. I had no idea. I'm so sorry. And you know what? I didn't need their sorries. I just needed myself. I needed to know that standing up, even when your voice shakes, even when no one else sees the storm but you, it matters. A few of those people even asked if Renata's firm was hiring. Funny how that works. Renata pulled me into her office one afternoon and said, "You're kind of a legend. You know that?" Quiet rage in a cable-knit sweater. I love it. I burst out laughing. Don't romanticize the cardigan years. They were dark. She grinned. Whatever they were, they made you this. And this is a damn powerhouse. I didn't know what to say. I'd spent so long trying not to be too much of anything. Too loud. Too ambitious. Too emotional. Too needy. But here, I could be it all. Loud and careful. Confident and scared. Bold and soft. And no one asked me to shrink. I was finally living a life that made sense to me. I even started painting again. I hadn't picked up a brush since my mom got sick, and one night I just pulled my old supplies out of storage, laid down a plastic tarp in the middle of my living room, and painted until 2 a.m. It was messy, kind of ugly, and totally unhinged, and I loved every second of it. Ginger sat beside me with paint on her nose like it was just another Tuesday. I started volunteering at this community workshop downtown, too. teaching logistics basics to women trying to re-enter the workforce. I'd stand up there with my slides thinking if you only knew how many times I almost gave up. And I'd tell them, you don't have to be loud to be powerful, but you do have to know your worth. It became kind of a mantra. My new way of measuring success wasn't title or salary or whether some man in a tie thought I was a team player. It was this quiet pulse in my chest that said, you're building something real. Mateo noticed it too. He'd say things like, you glow different now. And I'd roll my eyes, but part of me believed him. Because it wasn't just the job or the new routine or even the relationship. It was this deep, settled knowing inside me. I had walked through the fire and come out not burned, but branded. Branded with truth, with courage, with proof that I am not what happened to me. I am what I chose to do with it. There's this quote I read once that said, you're not late. You're on your own timeline. And that hit me hard. Because yeah, maybe I spent 17 years in a windowless office. Maybe I let people overlook me for far too long. But I also learned everything. I learned how to read people, how to build something from chaos, how to speak up without setting myself on fire. I learned who I am when no one's watching. So no, those 17 years weren't wasted. They were the setup. They were the reason I knew exactly what to do when that red folder landed on my desk. They were the reason I didn't panic, I smiled. Because I knew something Walter didn't. I knew myself. And that changed everything. If you're watching this right now and you feel like no one sees you, like your work doesn't matter, or like you're just surviving day to day, I want you to hear me. You're not invisible. You're not broken. You're becoming. Even when it feels like nothing's changing, even when the world tells you to stay quiet and small, there's a part of you that knows. Trust that part. Trust your own quiet power. And when the time comes, don't be afraid to use it.